All right, we are delighted to have with us today composer Simon Sargon. Simon served for 27 years as music director at Temple Emmanuel in Dallas, Texas. He has taught at the Sarah Lawrence College, at Juilliard, at the Marymount College, at Meadows School of the Arts at Southern Methodist University. He also served as head of the voice department at the Reuben Academy in Jerusalem. He has composed many liturgical works, oratorios, operas, major orchestral works, and chamber music. And it is a real privilege to have you with us today, Simon.
Thanks, Josh.
Okay, Simon, let's start off with some big questions. What attracted you to music, to composition, to choral music, and specifically to Jewish music?
I started out pretty young. When I was 6 years old, I went to a piano recital of a friend, and I heard the music and fell in love with music and asked my parents for a piano. And when I started lessons, I started writing down little tunes, and that's how it all began and mushroomed into bigger things all along. Um, I always was very, very interested in Jewish music. I grew up in a very observant background, and it was a bicultural background since my father was an Indian Jew, family originally from Cochin in India, and my mother was from Minsk or Pinsk. They never were sure whether it was the M or the P, but anyway, it was a mingling of two cultures. And growing up in Boston, I primarily was involved with the Ashkenazi culture because there wasn't a strong Sephardic presence there at that time. But I always was interested in that part of my background. And as I grew older, I investigated it more and more. And I would say, even as a middle schooler, the cantor at the synagogue in Winthrop, who was a fine tenor cantor, had asked me to accompany him on programs. And I became exposed to a lot of the solo literature for solo voice of a religious nature, that was used in concerts. And of course, in the synagogue, no accompaniment, but a choir at high holidays and the cantor with his wonderful tenor voice. And that seeped into me, and the melody seeped into me. And in fact, I incorporated some of them in pieces later on down the line because they meant so much to me. So, as you yourself well know, being such a scholar in the field, Jewish music is primarily vocal in its orientation, and from solo vocal, proceeds to choral. And that's what happened too. When I became the director of music at Temple Emmanuel, I had a chorus at my disposal and wrote a great deal of music for them. It was there that I learned how to write choral music because they were my guinea pigs, if you'll excuse the traffic. And I found out what worked, what didn't work, and that was something that I did with great pleasure for 27 years. It was trying to bring my very heavily Jewish background, intense, to a Reform synagogue that was primarily from German Reform, where the Jewish element had been attenuated quite a bit. And I tried to restore that. The first thing I did when I went there was to put the Sephardic pronunciation for the Hebrew. And from then on, I kept trying to introduce, they had never done Yiddish music, they had never done Ladino music. I tried to give them a sampling of all of that, making arrangements and so forth. That in a nutshell, Josh, is the answer.
So you've written lots of music of various genres.
Yet,
In addition to the Jewish music, how do you differentiate between the two? Do you approach them differently?
that borders on the question of what is Jewish music, which I know something you wanted to discuss. everything I write is Jewish just because of who I am. That there's no saying about that. But if you wanted to define Jewish music, that's another area to discuss. And I mean, to say that a piano quartet that I wrote was Jewish music, we'd have to open up a definition there.
Okay.
But it's in the posing of the question is the problem, because you can't answer that question without saying, what is Jewish itself? What is Judaism? Is it just a religion? Is it a religion cum nationality? Is it an ethnicity? If you could answer those questions, then you could say, this is Jewish music, that is not. But given my background and growing up steeped in it, in synagogue music, in liturgical music, in Israeli folk music, everything came to roost and is active when I write even non-liturgical or non-specifically Jewish music.
Mm-hmm. It's in your bones, it's in your blood, so it inevitably will come out.
It's in the DNA, that's right.
Yeah, yeah.
And if you said, what is it? Well, I would say, it's intensity, it's passion, it's lyricism, it's pain and suffering. All those things are wrapped up in it. And they're found, that defines what Jewish music is, even if academically you can't make the borders, the actual definition.
So the piece that we're listening to in this program, the Hallel 2000, I believe you composed for the 125th anniversary of Temple
Yes, the
Emmanuel.
temple, yes, had been founded in Dallas by Germans way back when.
And our performance is just the third and fourth movements. But can you tell us something about, the first thing that struck me is how wonderful the translation of the Hebrew was, how lyrical.
Mm-hmm.
It begs to be composed. Right, right. And you need that kind of intense text, condensed text for a music.
That's right. For
Setting.
music, yes, I find that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because music is always an element that extends. So therefore, you don't want a text that's self-repetitive or that extends in itself. And then you add music, and then you've lost all the drama or the theater of the moment.
And it certainly is a dramatic work with contrasts between the sadness and the exaltation. And on a surface level, we see the change from the minor key to the major key and from the different tempos and the addition of syncopation. I love the section where you have the buzzing of the bees.
Oh, that was fun. That was really nice.
They're surrounding.
How to do that with the brass instruments.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to capture that. Yeah. When I wrote it, there was all the excitement of the millennium. The world numbering the years 2000 was big at that time. We had no Afghanistan, COVID, all the things of today. I remember the Friday night was the night that all the fireworks went off all over the world for the millennial. And somehow that was a very exciting thing for the 2000 to come around. And at the same time, the temple started by this small group of Germans, which had mushroomed to over 3,000 families in the course of 100-odd years, and made such an impression on Dallas, the world, the city of Dallas, and the society of Dallas. The contributions are enormous when you think of the Meyerson Center, which is one of the finest concert halls named for a member of the temple. The Nasher sculpture, what that has brought to the city, and he was a temple member, and so on. The Jewish impress on Dallas is enormous, as I think in a lot of cities where Jews were a number of the population. But anyway, the whole idea of the temple becoming what it became was also exciting, coupled with the 2000. And the Psalms, when you tie them in with the Shalosh Regalim and the festivals that they are recited at, and the range of their moods, the four that were chosen to comprise the Hallel, it's a very challenging and stimulating text. And I wanted to do it as big as I could, but I couldn't get the funding. So at least I used the brass instruments, the timpani, I used the organ, and I had the big chorus. But I wanted the power of all of that for this occasion and for this statement about Hallel. Praise, praise, praise. So everything comes from the words, as you know, as a composer and arranger. And in the soprano movement, the pain of that movement, the third movement in the middle section with her solo.
Yeah, as well as the beautiful lyric, I will call upon God and God's love
Yeah,
coming
but then
forth.
that recurs, and it's almost like a lilting, consoling factor in the midst of all
Yeah.
of that. Yeah,
And then the triumph at the end, I was saved with the power of the Lord, with the
that's right.
brass fanfares
That's it. Yeah,
announcing that.
yeah.
It's a wonderful dramatic piece.
Oh, thanks.
Simon, anything else that you'd like to tell us?
No, I would tell you what I'm working on right now is a large piece called Azkara, which is I call it a Jewish requiem, in quotes, for the requiem. I didn't want to call it a Jewish requiem. I called it a Jewish memorial service. But when I tell people I'm working on it, they say, "Oh, a requiem, a Jewish requiem." So I put that in the title line now. Anyway, I've selected psalm texts and other texts that are associated with mourning and with burial and grief, and compiled them to put together a 6-movement work, which culminates in a new setting of the El Malay Rachamim that could be used to memorialize the death of a prominent person in Judaism or some figure in the community, that there would be a piece that people could turn to. Because in nowadays, what do you do? You can do a setting of the 23rd Psalm. What about a setting of the Kaddish? Is there a good setting of the Kaddish that's usable? But this is intended to be about a half an hour solid piece of music that could be a concert piece. I mean, like Fauré Requiem or one of those Brahms that's programmed in a concert program, or it could be used as an actual memorial to a specific human being, and with quotations or memories of that person, or readings interwoven to the movements of these.
Simon, it's been a pleasure talking with you, and we've had the pleasure of performing a number of your works over the years, and especially this Hallel 2000, which we enjoyed so much. So,
thank you so much.
Wish you all the best, and thank you for
you.
being with us.
Thanks so much, Josh, and thanks for inviting me. And best of luck to start up once again in your noble endeavors. in the field of performance of Jewish music that has been unfortunately denied us all in the last year and a half.
Indeed.